But Zach Barnett, Football Scoop, joins us now on 365 Sports. Zach, you were reporting this. I know Ben Portnoy from Sports Business Journal was also reporting on it. But private equity is coming to college football and college sports. It's here with this company called Elevate. But has it been a challenge today to figure out, like, through the mud of that it exists and where the money's coming from, who actually is taking this deal, if anybody yet?
Yeah, so since the story came out this morning that private equity, the vultures have been circling college athletics for months and years now, and everyone's just kind of wondering who's going to be the first to actually take the bait. And so Sportico reported that the other website, Front Office Sports, reported that 2 schools have done that. And then Sportico came out this afternoon and said it was UCLA and Penn State that have agreed to deals with private equity. And then both schools have since come out and said, yeah, we have certain contracts and business dealings, but we are not the 2 schools. We have not agreed to take private equity's money. So the hunt for the first 2 remains on, but the original report from this morning said 3 to 6 additional schools are expected to join by the time the first football games are played this fall. So it's really just a matter of when and not if.
I was kind of hoping that was true because everybody's guess was like, well, what small schools and the non-power conferences are going out for PE money? It's like, oh, it's 2 Big Ten teams that, like, you would think, well, at least in Penn State's case, might not need for money, but it's not true. So now I guess we just continue the guessing game on who this actually might be. But this is a logical next step, Zach, I guess, for schools is PE. Or I mean, how do you view all of that in the grand scheme of things?
I think the takeaway here for fans is that the need to continue to build and improve bigger and better facilities is still going to be there. And up until a few years ago, for the most part, you relied on donors to do that. Now, who's going to want to donate to build a new locker room when they could just donate to the players that are going to fill that locker room? Now, that money most urgently is still going to go to players. The need for facility improvement and construction is still going to be there. So that's where the thinking is that private equity is going to fill that gap, and then private equity is going to make up their money on the back end. Will this work out like everyone believes it will? I have no idea. We all have our doubts, but that's what the people involved are saying.
Zach, what are your thoughts on I guess this is actually the first step now that the House settlement has been approved about what you're going to see, especially from the recruiting arm and the coaching aspect of this, because you do cover coaching movement really, really well.
Yeah, I think really what we've done is we've gone back to the I used, I guess, 2021, everything from 2020 to the last couple of years is kind of just a blur. But we're going back to the old days, the under the table system of recruiting and paying college football players, because we've proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a market value for these guys' services as elite college football players. And if I was to call Baylor, Kansas State, Utah, and said, hey, I represent an all Sun Belt wide receiver, and he's interested in possibly coming to your school, how much is he worth? All of those guys at those respective institutions can tell me a ballpark dollar value that's probably pretty comparable. So that tells me that there is a market for these guys' services. And who is Deloitte and NIL Go to tell me what fair market value is and what a legitimate business purpose is? So I'm far from the first person to come out and say that this is going to lead to lawsuits the first time Deloitte comes out and says, no, the money that you were paid 2022, 2023, 2024, because these schools have signed this document in 2025, you are no longer allowed to pay that. Rev share is probably going to be about 13 to 15 million, give or take, per player or per football team of that 20 million. You do the iPhone calculator math, that's about $105,000 per player at 105 scholarship players. That's not near what these guys are worth. We know what these guys are worth. So someone's going to fill in the gap. The players, the families that depend on this money, their agents are not going to take these massive pay cuts and say, well, you either get a Dr. Pepper deal or you get nothing. That I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe that there's going to be lawsuits and the courts are going to rule you do not have the legal authority to tell these guys they can't be paid for being college football players. I think that's where that's going to happen. I think the powers that be expect that to happen. But at the same time, I don't fault them for trying to create these quote unquote guardrails, because I can't imagine how miserable it must have been these past few years to try and build and maintain a college football program with this structure.
Zach, do you also find it humorous in a sad way almost, but we did all this and we're back to $100 handshakes and envelopes and lockers? Like, what in the world?
It's a great meditation sport. It's just yourself. You get out here, feeling the rhythm, feeling the rhyme. It's a good time.
Gives me the opportunity to hang out with the fellas for about 5 hours, and I get some solitude, relaxation, and a great time.
There's nothing I love more in life that doesn't have a heartbeat than golf.
I like the frustration involved with trying to find that right elusive swing. Or I just like to have a couple cocktails with some friends and maybe some cigars.
Golf is therapy to me.
Malban Golf.
It really is ironic in that way, and I think the as we look back on this era that's now, I think, officially closed, for better or worse, I think really what's killed everyone is it's not necessarily the NIL, because that wasn't coming out of the schools' pockets. It was coming out of largely donors' pockets. And we could say, well, it was unsustainable, but the money kept going up and up and up. I mean, remember that story from a few years ago when it was $13 million was what Ryan Day told Ohio State, the Columbus business community, that's what it was going to take to build a championship level Big Ten roster. Now $13 million of just collective money in the Big Ten wouldn't even buy you an Outback Bowl trip. So the money kept going up and up and up. I think what killed it was the lack of continuity, the unlimited transfers. And that's entirely the court's fault and ultimately the NCAA's fault. I think if we could have had unlimited NIL along with restricted player movement, I think we would have had something sustainable. But having unlimited NIL and unlimited player movement, I don't fault the quote unquote adults in the room, the ADs, the coaches, the school presidents for trying to put a stop to this.
Do you think that what is your opinion on the widening gap that will now maybe be more starkly made because schools could opt in or not pay their full $20 million or decide that hey, you know what? We're a basketball school. We'll have football, but football, we're going to spend most of our money on basketball. So their football won't be as competitive. Do you think this will push the P4 further apart, or do you think this gives people an opportunity to maybe close the gap?
I don't think so, because ultimately those decisions are going to be made by people who work on short-term contracts and want to continue doing their jobs. To fill in your example, I'm thinking of a school like Mississippi State. Mississippi State's never, ever, ever going to win the SEC in football. Mississippi State loves their baseball program. The smart play is to probably, if you're going to stretch that $20 million, to spend it disproportionately on baseball, or if you're Kentucky, spend it on basketball. But that's not going to go over well. Coming out and saying, if you're Mississippi State, coming out and saying you can't compete with Ole Miss, LSU, your neighbors in football, I don't imagine ever going well, even if it would be the smart move. I think the short-term winners, as everyone is pointing out, is the basketball-only schools, the Big East schools, your Gonzaga, schools like that do not have football programs to feed, that can spend the lion's share of that in basketball. I think what's going to be interesting is a school like Texas Tech that's obviously done extremely well in softball. Are they going to continue to invest in their softball program at the expense of their women's basketball and their other women's sports? South Carolina women's basketball is obviously punching above their weight class, even though they don't technically turn a profit on that sport. It's done a lot of good for that school. Are they going to rob Peter to pay Paul in that respect? I think that's something that's going to be interesting to watch. But at the end of the day, I think all these schools are going to find ways to quote unquote cheat to pay these guys anyway.
You talk to a lot of coaches, Zach. What would you describe as the general mood of the college football coach when it comes to their job right now?
That's a good question. I think it was very, very weary, and you heard terms of burnout and people getting out of the profession, going, guys moving up to the NFL is always a thing, but taking any life raft possible to go live a real life in the NFL, which you couldn't do in college football. I think there's some cautious optimism. I think At the end of the day, it's still a very competitive enterprise, and I'm just kind of all waiting for the first time that Deloitte or whoever it is says, no, we can't. I know you did a great job recruiting this player, but we can't get him because we can't afford to pay him. At the end of these days, these coaches know, well, now my roster's not going to be as good if I can't get this guy, and I'm going to lose games and potentially lose my job because I can't build the roster I need to do to go out and win Big 12, Big 10, ACC, SEC football games. I think very much the rubber is still yet to hit the road in that regard.
In regards to a story today in coaching circles, Vince Mero leaving Kentucky, you had that story up on the site within the last hour, seeing a lot of big reaction to this as he makes the move over to Louisville, and a lot of like, well, this means Kentucky's in trouble and this means that. How big of a move is this for Louisville, and what are your thoughts on the move itself and what it says big picture-wise?
Yeah, I think it's a really smart move by Jeff Brom and a smart move by Vince Mero. I think Mark Stoops' best days at Kentucky are behind him. He got, I think, an inordinate amount of praise for doing a replacement level job. He's better than Joker Phillips. I don't know that he's Hall of Fame worthy for what he's done at Kentucky, but I think that his best days are behind him. I've been hearing for a while now that other staffers are looking to get out at Kentucky. We'll see how successful they are come this winter. Obviously, Mark Stoops himself is looking to get out of Kentucky, see Texas A&M. Vince Mero made $1.3 million this past year, and it's not because he's that good of a tight ends coach. I don't think Kentucky's littered, or the NFL is littered with Kentucky tight ends. It's because that guy got players to Kentucky. And so to make Louisville stronger and Kentucky weaker is a great move by Jeff Brom. For Vince Mero, it gets him out of Kentucky and gets him off the field and off the road recruiting. I think it makes a lot of sense for those two parties, and I think it really hurts Kentucky.
What do you think about, Iowa as well? Iowa brought in Scott Pioli. Oklahoma's brought in more people.
What has Oklahoma not done at this point, Zach? Yeah. I mean, I feel like there are no stones to turn over at this point in Norman, Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, I think Oklahoma's renovating the house while Brent Venables is still living in the master bedroom. I wrote in my story today you could make an argument that of the 9 most important people in the Oklahoma football building on a day-to-day basis, 6 of them weren't there in December. You're talking your offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, starting quarterback, John Mateer. You got a new head trainer that was hired today, Jim Nagy, his general manager, and the staff that they just announced today. Brent Venables, himself, so to speak, as his own defensive coordinator after Zach Alley, a guy that they all thought was going to be there for a while, left after 1 year. And then you hire Randall Stevenson, who Jim Nagy and Brent Venables both report to. Jim Nagy does not report to Brent Venables. He and Venables report to Randall Stevenson. So I think you can make the argument that Oklahoma is finally doing what they should have done when they first hired Brent Venables and giving him the tools he needs to go win in the SEC. Or I think you could argue that Oklahoma is souping up their program to finally remove the excuses for Brent Venables. And if they go 6-7 again, he'll be gone. But Jim Nagy is still going to be there. Randall Stevenson's going to be there. Ben Arbuckle might still be there. Who knows, depending on what direction they go, that no one can fill in that blank right now. But I think Oklahoma is investing in their infrastructure in a way that's going to live, that's not tied to Brent Venables in any way.
Zach, what about Scott Pioli in Iowa? I mean, is Kirk Ferentz trying to maybe actually win the Big Ten now with a quarterback and modern look at it, or is this them looking ahead to when Kirk Ferentz goes, I'm done?
I don't think that I don't get the sense that this is a major move for Iowa, because they hired 2 other people who, from the wording of the release, are going to be the people that are there on a day-to-day basis actually making decisions. It seems to me in reading that Pioli had been there for a while and is just kind of a consultant type of, hey, you might want to think about this, or this is how this is done in the NFL. Because, in college football, making these hard decisions and deciding how much to pay. Do you pay your starting senior running back more than your freshman defensive end or your freshman outside receiver, even though that's a more high-profile position than your running back? All this stuff is new territory to college football, but they've been having these discussions in the NFL for a long, long time. So to me, it seemed like a type of person who, when you call him, he picks up because you're paying him, a good amount of money per month. But I don't think I didn't get the sense that he's the guy. He's not the new Jim Nagy of Iowa football, so to speak, at least in my interpretation.
Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com. Zach, give me your off-season mood with having to cover all this stuff when normally, I mean, you guys do an unbelievable job on coaching movement. I'm not sure anybody can really match you guys in that. What is your kind of off-season mood when you have to cover all this other stuff?
In a way, I think mixed feelings. It's certainly, I kind of chuckle when, quote unquote civilians ask, so, you only cover college football? That's your only job? What do you do in the off season? It's always what off season. There's always something happening. Generally, it's something happening for a stupid reason. I mean, we all remember the great satellite camp wars of 2017 or whatever that was with Jim Harbaugh. I mean, that seems like the ultimate small potatoes now that we are building and destroying these worlds every offseason. I think it's been good for the game. I think we've proven that these college football players have economic value, and that was being illegally denied from them. And these guys deserve to make money, and I'm glad that they're finally doing that. None of us would have jobs if not for them. So I'm glad they're participating in the economic value that their labor creates. That's created some unintended consequences due to decades of inaction from the NCAA that we don't need to get into here. But at the end of the day, over these past few off seasons, and then of course the COVID off season was hell on earth for all of us for a million different reasons. But I remember, once you got to that fall of 2021, it's like, okay, well, it feels like college football again. And then 2022, we had a tumultuous off season. 23, 24, all these crazy off seasons, and then that first Saturday in September, or the last Saturday in August, whatever it happens to be, hits, and you're like, all right, it's the sport we all know and love again. And as long as it continues to remain that, I'll be happy to put up with whatever we have to from February to August.
Zach, appreciate your time as always. Enjoy the summer. I know that we will talk to you again soon. Will you be at Big 12 Media Days? Will we get to see you there?
That's my plan. I didn't make it to Vegas last year, but now that it's back in the Metroplex, as long as my wife's not out of town and I'm on kid duty, I will make it my best effort to be there for sure.
All right. Hope we get to see you there. Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com.